Alrighty, so I wanted to have an open discussion, an open mic, off the cuff discussion about the future of emulation. They recently stopped distribution of ROMs and emulators on a site called Emuparadise. Emuparadise was arguably one of the biggest websites for distributing ROMs and ISOs on emulators, and they closed down. They released a statement that you will see here on the screen, and it all amounts to, we tried to keep this site up for years. We tried to console our teammates, try to get advice and see what we could do in the future, but the stress was too much, and I assume that stress was due to DMCA takedowns, meaning that companies didn't want their ROMs or ISOs distributed to the general public. I know a lot of people say it's an act of piracy, they had the right to protect their IPs. While no one is saying that it's not cool for a company to go out and protect the assets they paid for, to protect the IPs that they paid for, there has to be some sort of middle ground here when you remove archival sites for games that people probably will never get a chance to play. A lot of people probably have differing reasons for playing certain games that doesn't correlate to piracy all the time. A lot of people like to think you're just pirating games. You don't buy games, but it's hard to buy older games. Let me tell you why. Some older games, some of those carts, they are mad expensive unless you get really lucky and go to like a flea market or something. Unless you get really lucky and you find like a used game that actually works, because I've been a used game shopper for years. It's hit or miss. Sometimes you get games that will work and it's a used game and the price wasn't really that much. Other times that person who gave you that used game, they probably didn't take care of the disc and that game probably will not work anymore. So there's always a catch. There's always some weird connotation behind trying to buy most physical games. And a lot of people say this correlates to you stealing, but the games that are sold in certain markets, like the used game market, which a lot of people tried to kill off, because guess what? If you buy a game used, the same tried and true tradition still happens. The developer doesn't get your money on that market. It mostly goes to the vendors selling the game. Once again, all it takes is remembering that giant anime saga of the Xbox One initially trying to limit the use of used games. People don't want that market to exist for a reason, but I guess you're a bad guy if you buy a game from another vendor, right? Again, I buy all of my games new. Each and every one that I try to buy new in this current generation. In this current generation, I'm talking about the present. The present is what matters. I buy my games new. I bought God of War 2018 new. I buy a lot of my Steam games, whether they are new or old, all the time. As important as forward compatibility is, backwards compatibility is also just as important. There are a lot of companies that are trying to preserve, but they just don't deliver on the promises of giving you a very, very wide selection. There is Xbox doing very great with backwards compatibility. You don't even have to rebuy your game. If you use your previous disc, you can download the game and play it anytime you want. No hassle. That's great. Nintendo, they are doing the whole thing with the virtual console. You can buy SNES games and NES games on there. You don't have GameCube yet. You don't have N64. That is a problem. That is a problem. And I think when we finally get around to the PlayStation preservation on PS4, it's probably going to be equivalent to a fucking skeleton rotting in the sea. I'm dead serious. You have PlayStation Now for PS3 games. You are able to use a cloud-based streaming service, so that invites pixelization, input lag, artifacting, all those good joyous things that you would expect for Sony to not really recognize, for Sony to not really let you download your games to your console to make a better experience. They don't have the PS1 library on PS4, so you can't play older PS1 games on there. And also, the PS2 selection is very minuscule and you have to pay for those games. Again, you can't use your CDs to get those PS2 games on your PS4. So if you already own the game in some capacity and Sony with their infinite wisdom decided to not put a disc recognition system into the PS4, that means that you have to double dip if you want to play again. That's pretty bad. That's where I give Microsoft the W, because that makes things a lot more convenient and you don't have to pay again for a game you already owned. I think in the virtual console store for Nintendo, getting those older games are a bit more cheaper than they are in the PS4 library, the PS2, the PS4 library. The real kicker here is that taking away these archive sites, they really don't leave much room for people to really play these obscure games, these games that were not really available in their country. A lot of people have problems getting some of these certain games. A lot of people can't even really download and play them originally. They're not available in some stores digitally. A lot of the stores now aren't that comprehensive by Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft. So if Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony, if they're gonna do these DMC takedown notices, could you do us a favor and please do a better job at archiving these games? I know sometimes it's out of your hands. I know there's nothing you could do sometimes. Another example here. When the license to a game, like if they have like music or something and they just can't afford to give that copyright holder money anymore, then they have to take the game out of the store and they have to take a potential game out of the consumer's hands. Do you see what I'm saying? These stores aren't perfect, they aren't comprehensive, so it's good when people do take these games, upload them, and archive them. No matter what you say, it is very good to have backwards compatibility in some way, shape, or format. And I think taking down Emuparadise is going to create the Streetsland effect, where people will upload whatever. They're going to upload these ROMs on other sites under the radar, and this is what's going to happen. I want PlayStation, I want Nintendo, I want Xbox to improve their stores. Don't forget about the past. That's all I want. I said this before in a post, like, killing off Emuparadise was a bad thing. I know alternatives will arise. I know there is Vim's Lair. I know there is other sites out there like CD Romance and free ROMs. Free ROMs works for me. But again, people, we need to preserve history, because once it's gone, where are these games gonna be when people want to play them in a new generation? Like, PC gaming is becoming a lot more prevalent. People are going out there and building rigs. They want to experience these games that they weren't able to play. And what if they can't find them on like digital platforms of consoles now? Like, what if those games aren't on there? What if those older games, if you go out and buy them, they're way too expensive? What if those games are not remastered, not reprinted? What happens when they become rare? That means that games like Amazing Spider-Man 2, certified trash, What if someone wants to do a Spider-Man marathon? Well, guess what? Activision does not own Spider-Man anymore. You're paying an upwards of about $100 for a new copy of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, not every game is remastered. Again, not every digital service carries every retro game for us to play, every obscure game for us to play, games that weren't even available here in America, like Yu Yu Hakusho Forever. I had to play that on emulation. What am I supposed to do? The options are very limited for hunting down a lot of older games. Sometimes you get lucky, other times you just don't. If it's not remastered, if it's not available right now, you're not going to get always lucky. And that happens. That's why it sucks they took down this site. I wouldn't even be surprised if this enables more scalping. People go out there, they see a rare list of games that people can't get anymore. Sites are being cracked down. You have to buy it. Let's say you're going out to buy like an old Mario game in the next 20 years and you're spending like $100, $200. Imagine if a company did that now. That would be crazy. Turmoil. The entertainment industry would be ablaze if a company, a current console owned company or a console maker, if they made like a fucking game that broke retail, conventional retail. But I guess these people can get away with it. Again, I don't want to end this on a negative note. At least there's still options available to you despite what's going on. At least there are people working together to archive ROMs, ISOs, older games. At least there's still people working on emulation to try to make it better. So they really haven't quit those efforts. At least there is still something going on. At least there is comprehensive search engines in case you want to find your latest game. At least you can go out there and look for the cheapest option. At least you can take a gamble on the used game market. At least Emuparadise itself, while the ROM section has been shut down, I think they are going to turn the site into a forum website like Reset Era. So Emuparadise still exists in some capacity. If you feel like supporting them, then go to their website and see what's happening on the forums. But before these companies get on some pedestal and they press that red button, instead of just taking sites down, improve your own digital store and people will flock to it. People will buy GameCube games on the virtual console. You just have to put it up there. People will buy certain games from 15 to 20 years ago if they really have that much interest to go back and do so. At least give the people the options so they can decide to give you money. And I'm sure it could go well for you as a company if you decide to put out, an emulated machine. Look at Nintendo. They fucking struck gold with the NES Mini, SNES Mini. So maybe other companies can take a shot. Put out a PlayStation Mini, PS1, PS2, Dreamcast. Something to that magnitude. Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn. I know a lot of people who really never touched a Saturn. It came and it went. Give us options and we will give you money. Take away options and you will take away games out of the hands of the consumers. That's how I feel. Once again, this is Renegade Operative. Hopefully more companies think about the future of emulation. Hopefully more people follow the Streetsland effect and upload these pieces of history, because it's quite funny that once again, a 15-year-old game you can't play these days. They're going down. Like a game that a company will not make money off of, possibly in regards to a new copy. Those sites are going bye-bye. And I think even all the other alternatives like Vim Layer, CD Romance, they might fall by the wayside. You never know. So I would say, again, try to enjoy getting all these ROMs and ISOs while it lasts. Go and support the devs. I do believe in that. If you can find a game, you can go buy it. I mean, if you can't find it, 19 years old, shit like that, I totally don't mind when people download those at all. Like, have a fucking field day, because a game should not be hard to find or search for. It should be available when you search for it. That's what I believe. I also hope that developers in the future, they actually give us more options and you'll make more money. Just try it. I know I summarized this video like 19 billion times, but again, this was my off the cuff discussion. This was my full thoughts, my raw, genuine opinions on the future of emulation. It's not really looking so bright the more these DMCA takedowns happen, but I hope that there is some compromise. I hope that developers will understand that the fans really want to help them in some way. I mean, this will be a good way to connect and give people jobs. That would be great, because the modding community, those guys, they work their ass off. They fix games even better than developers. I'll never forget the story of when someone took a modded original Xbox to Bill Gates. They said, you know, this can play other games, other ISOs from other companies. How do we prevent this? And Bill Gates said, that's amazing. Why would you want to take that away? How can we personally, as a company, capitalize on that idea? And then Xbox Live Arcade was born. Never take away the prospect of good ideas. It will bite you in the ass at the end. I will see you guys next time. Later.